How you doing, everyone? Today I'm going to take this time to make a video on how to replace the controller on a RAD Mini with an upgraded controller from Electrobike World. All right, the first step you're going to take is you're going to flip the bike on its back and remove the battery. So you can see I've done here, I just had pulled the battery out of its area just so it's not connected, so there's no power to it for safety reasons. And then you're going to remove this plate here by removing the 4 screws, which I've already done. As you can see, this has been unplugged, simply just pulls apart. You'll see some arrows on there as you look at it, and that's to align them, just for future reference. I'm gonna move over to here. You have to pull this grommet out so this piece will fit through there. I'm doing this completely alone, so I'll get it set up and I'll start the video again. Okay, I lied a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and just pull this out right now. Pull this back. As you can see, it runs with the brake cable as well, or the shifting cable. I'm gonna go ahead and pull that over this and then start feeding that through this hole. Pull this grommet off there. I had a difficult time getting this through that hole both directions. So I'm gonna shut the video off again. I ended up using some white lithium grease. You could still kind of see a little bit in there. Didn't wipe it all off to make sure it was a little bit slicker to get it through that hole both ways. So I'm gonna do that and I'll come back. Okay guys, this was kind of what it looks like. Once I removed this cover, now keep in mind, I just jammed this back in here so you can actually see it. This is what your controller looks like. So this yellow tape around here, Kapton tape, I actually put that on there myself, but you're gonna find your controller tucked in. You're gonna see these connections plugged into here. I've already gone and unplugged them. They're pretty simple, they just pull right apart. One point of note, and then this is the motor control cable from the new one. This is the old one. Either way, you have to feed it through this hole. I actually really struggled with getting it through there and fitting the grommet that goes through the hole to protect the cable. That was fairly difficult, so I'm not pulling this one out. Again, like I said, I've already done this. I just want to take back through the steps. So people who else want to pursue this can. Now, there is a safety note. This particular cable here is your battery power cable. And the connection on the controller looks like this. So when you separate these two, make sure you do not contact these two on any of the surrounding metal because the controllers actually store power. I did that, it sparked. Fortunately for me, I did not damage the controller. I went and took Kapton tape. Any kind of tape will really work, just to wrap the end of it, put something over it that's non-conductive so you end up sparking. We are going to come back and work with this cable specifically on the 2 controllers because the new controller does not come with the right cable. Understanding that, just opted to get the controller, modify it, and put it in anyway. With the old controller out of the way, this is the new controller. Put the link where I got it from. Great people. They worked with me on doing this. Got it with the intent of, as an experiment, to see if I can make it work. But if you look at this, it is a super tight fit. So I'm kind of show you what I did to get it in there. It is a tight fit, but it will go. But before we do that, I need to show you the power cable, how I had to modify it to make sure it matched up to the one coming from the battery here. There's alternate ways you can actually change the cabling from the battery if you choose to do so, but I found this to be the simplest, easiest way to get this controller to work. One of the first things I had to do with this controller is this tab was sticking straight out for mounting purposes. Once I determined it could fit if I folded it back, I actually just took pliers and gently folded it back over so it'd be flat so I can fit it into this space. This is where things can be a little dicey if you're not experienced in working with this type of stuff, but we are going to actually modify the power cables to the controller. I'm going to show you real quick how to take this apart. We have end cap screws on both sides. We're going to go ahead and pull those out. And then there's screws in the positions here, fairly straightforward. They look like this. It's going to unscrew those. See, in this step I've already done it. So I'm going to pull the end caps back off and I'll show you what it looks like inside. All right, have the back plate off on this side. There's going to be a rubber piece that goes there. That's for sealing the unit. There'll be one on the front that's attached to these cables. Go ahead and just gently slide this out. After we slide the actual internals of the controller, you're going to see this and this here. This is the wire going to the battery plug. This is the one off the old controller, but just for the purposes here, you want to cut these two wires. Make sure you cut them at separate times because it will short it out if you try to cut them together. And just simply pull this out. This is the piece we're going to use off the RAD controller, and we're going to install on the other controller. You know, as we look at this new controller, looking at the RAD was 17 max, 8 amps. This is 12 amps rated, so you get basically 50% more continuous and about 30%, maybe even 50% more. I didn't do the math in my head, from this controller. So this should do a substantial increase in power output, and that's going to shorten your battery life though. All right, so as we look at this one, we see the same type of side mounted screws. We haven't pulled the end cap off. If we look in there, you can see those bars right there. Those are loose. So once you unscrew them, they kind of fall around in there. So this one's a little bit more complicated to do. I'm pretty sure Electrobike World, where we got these controllers, great to do business with. Like I said, this is an experiment that we are conducting to see if we can make this work. It has. I'm sure they will work on something about the motor connections that will prevent this step. I'll leave that to them. Super easy to work with. Really have enjoyed the partnership with them so far. But yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and pull those out, and then I'll kind of show you what that looks like. Loosened all these screws. You can see that piece I was talking about is now loose in there. It'll fall out. The way it's fitting there, you have to actually pull these screws out of this completely before you can actually slide it out of the end. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that out, show you what that looks like, and we'll get it apart. All right, so now I got the screws out of those holes. I'm going to go ahead and just slide it out very carefully, understanding that there's more of those pieces in there. I'm going to flip it, orient it this way. I'm going to pull it apart, but I have to put the camera down to do that, so I'll start to get it apart and come back. Okay, since I got those screws out, I'm going to start pulling it out, but I did want to point out, if you look at where these tabs are right here, you'll see some more tape along that wall. Be very careful. It is an insulation type tape. I'm not even 100% clear on the purpose, but if it's there, I don't want to damage it, so just be very careful as you pull it out. As we look inside the frame here, you see the tape runs along there. You'll see kind of the orientation with these tabs down here for the board to slide into. Just keep note of that. All right, now that we got it apart, you can kind of see my handiwork from before. These same two wires, just like on the other one, red and black, you want to cut those separately and then just pull the connector out through. This has got some adhesive type stuff on there, so I'm gonna have to free it up there. You just go ahead and pull that out from this side, the power connector through there. Once you get that out, you simply just slide it back in, which is kind of a pain in the butt, to be honest. And then what I did is I took the ends, I bared the wires. So I did this, I stripped them down, I joined the wires together, and I soldered them together, and I put heat shrink over them. So it is a fairly solid connection. There's other ways you can do it. I do recommend using, since this is where a lot of the current is coming from the battery, that you do insulate it really well with shrink wrap. If you don't have shrink wrap or that capability, use electrical tape, Kapton tape, but make sure it's thoroughly protected, that the wire connections cannot be rubbed on something else, exposed to something else, or touch each other. I put the shrink wrap on there, and then I wrapped them both with the Kapton tape. And I wrapped them separately, then I wrapped them together just to make sure nothing can short out here or ruin the integrity. So now, simply just doing that, fairly simple process, right? I'm going to go ahead and put it back together. This is the more difficult part, kind of a pain in the butt, because you have to line up these tabs. Let's put the camera at a good angle. In between these things, so the holes line up in the middle, and pull against the side. So you have to line them up previously, and then you have to slide them in and then set the screws. So it's going to take me a few minutes to do that. All right, I'm going to reinstall. We're going to put these pieces in here. How these fit is over. All right, so now that those are in place, I'm going to very carefully checking the orientation here and looking at the lip available there. I'm going to make sure I line that up in there. I'll go ahead and just slide it in carefully to avoid messing up that tape. And here's where it gets difficult. I'll take the screws, try to line them up with those holes. I'm gonna go ahead and pause it here. I'm gonna get those set in because I need somebody else to help me do this. I'm gonna put the screws in there, make sure those pieces are lined up. It's gonna take some jostling and moving around, and then I'll go ahead and tighten them down. Once that's in, I'll put the end caps back on. All right, now we got it all put together. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and plug it in. I'm gonna run the motor cable through there. I'm gonna go ahead and plug everything in, and then I'm gonna show you how I fit it to the box. I'm just gonna take a minute. Plugging in is pretty straightforward. Just match the connections. Again, don't make sure you don't touch those two prongs on anything, because they will short out. I've got everything plugged in. Now is the hard part. Take a good look at this. It is a tight fit. Now the trick is to get it in kind of at an angle, making sure the cables don't get pinched. You can just get past that part. Get in there, just kind of finagle it in. Voila, perfect fit. Now we're simply just going to put the cover back on. So I'm going to put this in place. You can kind of see it. You might actually have to press it up against there because it's pushing against the cables. I haven't seen any signs of rubbing, but I'm going to go ahead and put that on and come right back to you. All right, super simple. You can line the cable up there. The only thing I want to point out about reconnecting this, there's a little arrow, as you can see right there, lined up with the arrow right here. Get them started that position, get them close, just slide them together. I'm going to put the zip tie back on to hold the cable right there. All right, it's all back together, zip tied in place. I do have a little bit of excess cable I don't want to push back in there, so I'm probably going to just zip tie it down there to keep it on along the frame. Cover's back on, all those connections are in. Next stage is flipping the bike over and installing the screen. All right, I didn't video, it's fairly simple. Here's the old RAD screen. There's screws that screw in there underneath. Unscrew those screws, pull that out for the handlebars. Do the same with the controller, take that out, screw it off. And you basically just stick this one on the exact same way on this one. Only one with this is, it's not 100% tight fit, so it is a little bit loose. Works for me, I'm not concerned about it. And you plug everything up. I'm going to pull the cables out and show you something I found on here. A little bit of a concern, not really a concern, but just a little bit of thing to be aware of. All right, once this is all mounted, you just have this simple connector here, plugged straight up to the one already on the bike. What I did find is the threads on this were slightly different than the threads on here. So it won't shoulder up all the way and lock in place with that nut. I'll put it together here in a second, but I want to grab the other one to do a comparison. So you have it plugged up like normal. Screw these together. You'll find that it won't set all the way. So I'm going to put down the camera again to do it. Okay. This is about as close together as I can get these. Won't thread in any further. And you can see there's some slop right here. Very little, but some. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use this tape. I'm going to squish it together as hard as I can. Use electrical tape just to make sure they don't pull apart. Haven't had it come apart with the electrical tape thing. Have not come apart on me yet. Voila, all done. So now you see it. Doesn't look any different. The controller is right where the other one was. But you have a lot more power. I'll do a video next showing the difference between the two. My other RAD Mini and this one with the power difference. I've already ridden this one. It's a substantial improvement. You gain about 50% more power. All right, thank you for watching.